Ever get feedback that just lands, well, weird? You read it and maybe think, huh? Or perhaps it left you confused, maybe even feeling a bit deflated?
Mm-hmm.
Well, today we're diving deep into the whole world of feedback. We're not just talking about how to get it, but how to really get it. Make it work for you.
Exactly. And we've pulled together quite a range of perspectives to sort of help us crack this code. We're looking at advice for writers from the Blue Tencel Agency, some really practical guidance for students from Imperial College London,
Okay.
some real-world chatter from a Reddit discussion among UMGC students, and even a pretty insightful case study on feedback in-group projects from the University of Bath.
And that's not all, right? We've got more in the toolkit.
We do.
Guides on interpreting and actually using feedback from Bath and Reading universities, some smart tips from bestcolleges.com on asking for feedback.
Yeah, the asking part is crucial.
A research article looking at the fundamental role feedback plays in learning, and a guide from York University on really understanding what the feedback actually means.
So our mission here, really, is to give you some actionable strategies, tools to navigate the feedback landscape with, well, more confidence, whatever you're doing.
Right, whether you're a student or a writer.
Or just anyone looking to learn and grow.
Yeah.
We want to help you move beyond just, passively receiving feedback to actively unlocking its value.
Okay, let's jump right in then. We all kind of know feedback when we see it, comments on a paper, notes from a boss. But what's really going on under the hood? Why should we care about it more than just, say, glancing at the grade?
Well, it's interesting because the way experts define it points to something deeper. Imperial College London, they talk about feedback as a dialogic process.
Dialogic, like a dialogue.
Exactly. Think of it less like someone just dropping information on you and more like an ongoing conversation. Even if it's written feedback, you're the one actively making sense of it, using that information to improve your work or, how you learn.
So it's not just a one-way street. It requires participation from my end.
Precisely. The Imperial College Guide really stresses that. It's an active process, not just something you passively receive. And the core purpose, which both Imperial College and a 2022 study by Obo point out, is all about improving the quality of your work, your learning strategies, the whole thing.
Got it. Making things better. But can we break that down a bit more? Like, what specifically does feedback do for us? How does it help us improve?
Okay, yeah. Imperial College lays out some really practical benefits. First off, it helps clarify what good performance actually looks like. Sometimes the expectations aren't totally clear, right?
Definitely.
So feedback acts like a bit of a decoder ring. It shows you what success really means in that context. It also prompts you to reflect on your own work.
Yeah.
It helps you spot where maybe things went off track so you can self-correct.
In stores.
Yeah, it encourages dialogue. Maybe with the person giving the feedback, it can boost your motivation too.
Okay, so it's not just about fixing mistakes on the page.
Not at all. It provides real opportunities to act, to apply what you learned. Ultimately, it improves your learning and can even help improve teaching. And like you said, it comes in so many forms: formal, informal, during a project, at the end, written, verbal, from peers, instructors, all sorts.
Okay, so we get the why, but let's be real. When you get that paperback or that email, your eyes shoot straight for the grade or maybe the summary comment. How do we discipline ourselves to look past that initial hit, good or bad, and actually manage the feedback effectively?
Yeah, it's totally natural. Imperial College and bestcolleges.com both say the absolute first step, maybe the hardest, is to actually read it.
Read all of it.
All of it. Don't just fixate on the grade or the score. That number is just a snapshot, right? The feedback itself tells the story how you got that snapshot and, critically, where you can go next.
Easier said than done sometimes, especially if it's not the grade you hoped for. That sting can be distracting.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where Imperial College has some really solid advice. Try to take the emotion out of it initially. If you feel that strong reaction, disappointment, frustration, even anger, it's okay. Just maybe. Set it aside for a bit.
Give it some breathing room.
Exactly. Come back to it later when you're feeling calmer, more objective. You'll be in a much better headspace to actually process it constructively.
That's such a practical tip. Just step away.
So once the initial emotional wave passes, what should we focus on when we do sit down with it?
We'll look for both sides of the coin. Pay attention to what you did well, your strengths, and the areas flagged for improvement. Both are super valuable.
Right, the good stuff tells you what to keep doing.
Precisely. And the other stuff points you towards growth. And, Imperial College adds a really important reminder. Be kind to yourself in this process. And also, try to extend some understanding to the person giving the feedback. Their intention is usually to help you learn and develop, even if it doesn't always feel that way. Right. Assume good intent, mostly. So, okay, we've read it, we've managed the emotions, we're looking at strengths and weaknesses. Now, how do we turn those comments into actual, tangible progress? How do we act on it?
This is where the rubber meets the road, right? Moving from reading to doing. Imperial College suggests making a concrete plan. How are you going to use this feedback in your future work? Think of it like a mini roadmap for improvement.
Should you actually, write this plan down?
You can definitely help.
Yeah.
And part of that planning is reflecting on why things happened the way they did in the original work. Were you distracted, rushed, tired? Think about how you could maybe adjust your approach next time. Better time management, finding a quieter space, whatever it is. And this is crucial, stressed by both Imperial College and the University of Writing. If anything is unclear, ask.
Yes. That vague feedback is the worst. Needs more work. Okay, but how? It can feel awkward asking, though, like you're challenging them.
It can feel that way, but that Reddit discussion among UMGC students really hit this nail on the head. A student was confused about feedback on their bibliography. Was it the formatting, the content?
Yeah. What do people say?
The consensus was overwhelming. Absolutely ask the professor. One person who actually teaches there said something like, it's their job to explain so you can improve. That's teaching.
Wow, okay. That reframes it completely. It's not complaining, it's part of learning.
Exactly. Another commenter put it perfectly. If you are seeking clarification with the ultimate objective to learn, there is no reason to feel that you are whining. They even embraced being that person who asks, because often others have the same question. And bestcolleges.com adds, quick questions after class or via email are fine, but for deeper dives, book office hours. Maybe even send the assignment ahead of time.
That feels much less intimidating now. But, okay, here's a tricky one. What if you read the feedback, you understand it, but you just flat out disagree with it?
Ah, yes, the disagreement dilemma. This happens a lot. And the Blue Pencil Agency, working with writers, has some brilliant insights that honestly apply way beyond writing. First rule. Don't just dismiss it out of hand because it clashes with your view.
Pause before reacting.
Right. Take a beat. Ask yourself, could the underlying issue be slightly different from what they flagged?
What do you mean? Give me an example.
Sure. Blue Pencil uses the example of a reader saying a character feels, too brash or unlikable. Maybe the real issue isn't the brashness itself, but that you haven't given enough backstory or motivation. The reader doesn't understand why the character acts that way.
Ah, so the feedback points to a symptom, but the root cause might be elsewhere. That's subtle.
Exactly. It's about digging a bit deeper. They also suggest thinking about alternative solutions. Maybe the fix the feedback giver proposed doesn't feel right for your work or your style. That's okay. But is the problem they identified still valid? If so, can you think of another way to address it that feels more authentic to you?
Okay, so explore different angles. But what if, after all that, you still think they're just wrong?
Even then, Blue Pencil has this great tip. Save all your feedback. Keep a file, digital or physical. Revisit it later, maybe weeks or months down the line, with fresh eyes.
A feedback file. I like that.
Yeah, they point out, quite rightly, that our own bias is being attached to our ideas, wanting to be right, maybe even just being tired or lazy at the time, can make us reject criticism that's actually helpful. Distance often brings clarity.
That rings so true. I've definitely felt defensive initially, then later gone, oh, yeah, they had a point.
We all have. And another key thing, especially if the feedback isn't from, say, an expert editor or your main instructor, is to get second opinions, third opinions even.
Like from a study group or writing group.
Exactly. For writers, workshops are great for this. Blue Pencil reminds us that our intent doesn't always match the reader's perception. Multiple perspectives help bridge that gap.
So triangulate the feedback, basically. And their final point is really about mindset, isn't it? Keeping your chin up.
Totally. It's so important. Don't let criticism crush your confidence. Feedback, especially negative feedback, doesn't mean you're not good enough. It just means the work isn't quite there yet. It's a signpost on the road to improvement, not the final destination.
Right. It's about the work, not about you personally. Okay, we've covered receiving feedback really well. But what about when you need it and it's just not coming? How do you proactively go after it?
That's where bestcolleges.com really emphasizes taking initiative. Don't just sit back and wait. Own your learning. Start by looking at your own work first. Where did you feel unsure? Where did you maybe lose points last time? Do a bit of self-assessment.
Okay, so figure out what you need feedback on before you ask.
Precisely. Then, like we touched on, quick questions might work after class or via email, but for something more substantial, definitely aim for office hours. Schedule it, give them the work beforehand if possible, and be specific.
Not just, how did I do?
Yeah, right. Ask things like, can you help me understand how I could have developed my analysis further in this section? Or what are the key conventions for this type of writing in our field that I might be missing? Focus on improvement for the future, not just haggling over the past grade.
That specificity makes a huge difference, I bet. Shows you've thought about it.
It really does. And here's a great pro tip from best colleges. If you know you'd really value detailed feedback on a particular assignment, let your instructor know before you hand it in.
Oh, really? Like, give them a heads up.
Yeah, just a simple, I'm really trying to work on X, so any detailed feedback you can offer on this assignment would be incredibly helpful. It shows you're engaged and allows them to plan their commenting time maybe a bit differently.
That's smart. Okay, now, sometimes the feedback itself uses language that's, well, academic jargon, maybe? Terms like weak analysis or lacks criticality. How do we decode that?
That's a common hurdle. The University Reading Guide highlights that feedback often comes in layers. You might get general comments, notes right in the text, and maybe a rubric score.
Right.
The key is to look for connections. How do those in-text notes illustrate the bigger comment? How do the rubric scores line up with the written feedback? Try to piece the whole picture together.
See how the different parts talk to each other.
Exactly. And reading strongly advises clarifying any terms you don't understand. Don't be afraid to ask. Maybe even start your own little glossary of assessment terms you encounter. Universities often have jargon busters online too, which could be super helpful.
Oh, that's a good resource to look for. And didn't the University of Bath actually break down some of those common, tricky phrases?
They did, yeah. Really practical stuff. They look at things like weak analysis, lack of criticality, more engagement with literature needed, doesn't flow well, too much breadth, not enough depth, needs better grammar, needs a more academic tone.
All the classics.
Pretty much. And they explain what these actually mean in terms of action. So, lack of criticality, for instance, isn't just about disagreeing more. It means you need to dig deeper, evaluate assumptions, question evidence, engage analytically, not just describe stuff.
Having those translated is incredibly useful. Takes away some of the mystery.
Definitely. Now, we should also touch on something really important, the emotional side of feedback. It can pack a real punch, positive or negative.
For sure. Good feedback feels great. Bad feedback, not so much.
Right. And Oboe's research from 2022 really digs into this. Positive feedback, it builds confidence, reminds you what works, helps you avoid repeating mistakes. It's fuel.
Yeah, it can really keep you going.
But negative feedback, it can be tough. It can really knock your self-esteem, cause anxiety, even fear. And that can actually get in the way of learning. Oboe found feedback can literally make or break a student's motivation and their ability to grasp things.
Wow. So the delivery matters immensely.
Hugely. That research suggests feedback needs to be kind, constructive, sincere. That's when it lands well and actually helps. Tone is everything.
Okay, so we're getting feedback, understanding it, trying to manage the feelings around it. How do we make sure we don't just file it away and forget it? How do we systematically use it for long-term improvement?
The University of Bath has a really neat practical idea for this. Create a system, a way to log your feedback. Could be a spreadsheet, a table, a mind map, whatever format works for you.
Like that feedback file idea, but more structured.
Exactly, a personal feedback archive. And the key is to actually revisit it regularly. Maybe before starting a new assignment, look back. Are there patterns? Recurring comments?
Identifying your common pitfalls or strengths.
Yes. That helps you create a targeted plan. And then for each new piece of work, use that past feedback almost like a checklist. Okay, last time they said I needed more specific examples. Am I doing that here? It helps you actively avoid repeating mistakes and build on your strengths.
That sounds incredibly proactive, turning feedback into a real learning tool over time.
And it's not just about receiving feedback, is it? Getting involved and giving feedback to others, like peers, can actually help you too. Well, the Imperial College Guide points out that when you practice giving feedback, you get better at analyzing work critically, which in turn makes you better at understanding the feedback you receive. You start to see things from the other side.
That makes sense. You internalize the criteria better.
Exactly. And they suggest using structured methods for peer feedback, like the feedback sandwich. Positive, then constructive, then positive again. Or stop, start, continue.
Right. Those frameworks can help make it less awkward, maybe?
They can. And Imperial College gives a whole list of qualities for good peer feedback. Make it understandable, selective, Don't overwhelm. Specific with examples. Timely, linked to the criteria, non-judgmental, balanced, forward-looking, transferable, focus on skills, and personal where it helps build rapport.
Wow, that's a comprehensive list. Good feedback takes effort.
It does, but practicing it helps everyone involved, including yourself.
Okay, let's tackle a really practical issue many listeners probably face. You've asked for clarification on feedback, maybe via email, and crickets. What do you do when the professor is slow to respond?
Yeah, that can be frustrating when you're trying to move forward. The Canvas guide offers some sensible advice here. First step, check the syllabus. Does it mention their communication policy or expected response times?
Good point. Always check the syllabus first.
Definitely. Then, give it a reasonable amount of time. Patience is key. Maybe 2-3 business days is a fair wait before sending a polite follow-up.
Polite follow-up being the operative phrase.
Absolutely. And remember office hours. That's often a great alternative if email isn't working. When you do follow up via email, keep it professional, clear, include all the necessary info, course name, assignment, your specific question, and probably best not to send follow-up after follow-up too quickly.
Right, don't pester. Good advice. One last area, group work. Feedback there adds another layer of complexity, doesn't it?
It really does. That University of Bath case study we mentioned looked into this. They found that using structured peer feedback within group projects can actually boost collaboration and accountability.
Oh, interesting.
Well, it can help spot if someone isn't pulling their weight early on. And it encourages more constructive conversations within the group about how they're working together. Plus, when students reflect on the feedback they get from their peers in the group, it improves their learning and also mirrors how feedback often works in professional team settings.
So it's good practice for the real world, too.
Exactly. So feedback, really, in all these different contexts, when you understand it, when you actively seek it out, when you really think about how to act on it, it becomes this incredibly powerful engine for improvement, for success in your studies, your work, wherever. That's the big takeaway from sources like the Canvas Guide and the Bath research.
So bringing this all home, feedback isn't just noise. It's not just a grade. It's this crucial dialogue for learning and growing. But crucially, it needs you to be an active participant. Don't just let it wash over you. Engage with it, wrestle with it if you need to, and use it to move forward.
Yeah, and if you start using some of these strategies we've talked about, you really can shift feedback from being a source of stress or confusion into becoming your own personalized roadmap, a guide to getting where you want to go.
Well said. And maybe a little something for you, the listener, to chew on. Think about the last piece of feedback you got. Did you really unpack it? Forget the grade for a second. What's just one small, concrete action you could take, maybe even today, based on that feedback, to nudge yourself a little closer to your goals? That's your food for thought for this week.